Hello, and you're very welcome to a special which features a gentleman who most critics would say is the best rock singer in the world. He, at one time, was selling 10,000 albums an hour, and he has performed in front of 200,000 people. His name is Robert Plant. Welcome.
Thank you, Peter. I don't know whether I could ever live up to all those tallies. I didn't do it by myself.
No, those are the days of Led Zeppelin. And when you were a blues man, weren't you, in the early days? When did you suddenly realise that the blues was in your mind?
Well, I think when I was at school, I used to listen to the current British pop music, and there were certain programs on continental radio that were indicating that a lot of this music came from somewhere else, and it came from the black American rhythm and blues school, so that versions of songs like Do You Love Me by Brian Poole and the Tremolos way back were being performed by different bands in America, and I was fortunate enough to have a very sympathetic record store who used to order the records for me to listen to, and if I was lucky enough to afford to buy them, I did. So I developed a taste for black music very early on, and once you've touched the surface of it and you scratch a little deeper, you get into some very, very good, meaningful music, and the blues just came quite naturally then.
So you're a music fan to begin with and a record buyer, and then started to perform in front of people.
Well, it was when I was fortunate enough to be around in just after the heyday of people like Gene Vincent, and he used to come and play in my local town. And I used to watch this guy on stage, and his delivery and the whole sort of purpose of what he was doing was really appealing, and it caught me, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I wanted to be Gene Vincent.
For those who are watching this in Europe, Robert comes from a town, or at least an area of Britain, which is called the Midlands, which is notorious, yet at the same time almost unbelievably patriotic to its rock music, isn't it?
I think so. As is France and Holland and Sweden too, I think. You know, you get the heart of rock and roll, and I suppose that the area that you also come from,
that's right, yeah,
is full of that kind of that genre of people. It's still very strong there, and it spawned consequently a lot of second-generation rockers who I mean, we could go on forever talking about who they were and who they are, but it's very interesting that so many people have actually come out of that area and had that driving force to go with it too. And even the Duran Duranis, who came from the same area, two of them have veered into a more demonstrative form of music with the Power Station, which I'm a great admirer of. And I think it's nice to create very simple and very pleasant music, but now and again everybody likes to leap out of the groove or even out of the folk club and go bang, you know.
One of the most exciting things about the next 3/4 of an hour is a chance to actually go back through all your videos since you started out on your own and have a look at the progression of Robert Plant as a solo performer. So we'll do that now with the first one, which is Burning Down One Side. This is Robert Plant. Robert Plant, my guest. The phenomenon of Led Zeppelin finished in 1980. Any one word or 2 words or 3 words which sum up that era?
Oh, it was a very dramatic period, very exciting, and something I wouldn't have changed 1 second of for anything.
And then 1982 saw the solo performance.
Yeah,
and that being the first release.
That was my first affair with the world of video. I had always admired Dave Robinson, who ran Stiff Records, and I got to know him through his involvement in the early days with Elvis Costello and company. And I thought that the whole company, the whole Stiff organisation was very interesting and very honest. So I said to Dave, why don't you make a video for me? I don't want to go to any of these sort of cliched people. So he said, okay, I'll leave it to me. And I didn't know
Irishman, by the way.
I didn't know that he changed so much from the guy who used to sleep under BP Fallon's desk years ago, but he got a big 500 SEL Mercedes and came to pick me up. And we made a video which really epitomises all about videos. It had every single woman in you could imagine, every model at $200 an hour, and the cars and all the phallic symbology, and me looking sort of bemused and a little bit perplexed throughout the whole thing. But at least I took my shirt off at the end. That's probably about the most logical conclusion to the whole thing.
So, Robert, who were you surrounding yourself with in those early days of setting out on a solo performance, and were you scared?
Oh, I was petrified. I mean, I entered a world which I knew very, very little about. I'd lived pleasantly with Led Zeppelin for years, and when I started off on my own, I realised I had to manage myself, that the times had changed, that I had to become a part of things that I'd very little knowledge about at all. And I got the musicians together, and I recorded the first album without a record deal or anything at all. I just wanted to see what I could do without committing myself financially or morally to anybody, and to see what might come out of it, and that was one of the tracks from it. It was a kind of hangover from Led Zeppelin, but that first album, emotionally and logically, would be a hangover from Led Zeppelin. The better stuff was to follow.
See, I can't imagine any musician sitting at home and having a phone call from you saying, hey, look, do you want to come and jam with me? Saying no. So I'd imagine you had the whole world almost at your feet.
Well, I had not got the guts and the sort of confidence to do that. I didn't know what to do. I thought I was such a cliche with Led Zeppelin, like the bare chest and the sort of, oh, baby, 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 squeeze my lemon and all that sort of... Look, where on earth does a guy start who really epitomises a form of music which has been totally misconstrued, because Led Zeppelin was not a heavy band. It was a very delicate and dynamic arrangement of people, but it was copied by so many people, and my style was copied so much that I thought, where is the place for me now? And I knew I had to start with a drummer, because the drummer was always almost the most important thing. So I called Phil Collins.
I was going to say, before you get into the lineup of the people that you surround yourself with, we'll take another look at another video.
Okay.
Take a look at another video, and then we'll come up and find out exactly who you did get around you.
This is a video without a drummer.
Without a drummer, right, Big Log, and the most famous solo recording so far from you, I guess.
In England.
Yes. Robert Plant and Big Log, and a massive success around the world, although you may have devalued that success a little bit from the success you'd had with Led Zeppelin, do you think?
No, no, it was a great milestone for me. I mean, it was a great triumph.
It's a very big record around the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, and really it was the kind of, it was so diverse, or so juxtaposed to the way that people saw me as a kind of the bare-chested screamer. It was the perfect record to do it with. It was the record that reawoke people in Holland. I got to #2 in Holland, and even in England it allowed me to do Top of the Pops, something that I'd taken the mickey out of for a long, long time. And suddenly I got an orange in each trouser pocket, and there I was doing...
That was a very synonymous moment for an awful lot of people when you did do Top of the Pops.
Nobody...
It broke a few barriers.
Yeah, well, I think it did, yeah, because I think a lot of people in the media and radio thought that I was this screaming ogre who may break a champagne bottle over their head and then disappear in a Rolls Royce or something like that. And I kind of got people, DJs and producers and stuff, to realise that I'm a competitive musician now. Or always was, but this is a different delivery, you know.
I think you're a little frustrated that that video in particular wasn't shown perhaps a little bit more.
Well, I think it was a very
video.
It's a good video, yeah. It's a good video, and it was a good time all round, and it was a very evocative song. And the forces that be in Britain only really play a video after a certain amount of success with the record. So you don't actually enjoy a video for a video's sake, and I quite enjoy watching them for their own sake.
They were shot in Death Valley.
Death Valley,
in California.
Yeah.
The lineup of the band, then?
This time round, and as ever, Robbie Blunt is on guitar. He's had quite a bit of notoriety playing with Silverhead and Michael DeBar in the glam rock days. Paul Martinez, who was with the Adverts, on bass. Jez Woodruff, who spent some time behind a curtain with Black Sabbath on keyboards. And right now, Richie Hayward from Little Feat on drums.
Well, you split the drumming there, don't you? Because Phil Collins also does a bit of drumming.
Well, Phil Collins has this sort of yen to be a drummer as well as to be a member of Marillion. So he played on the first 2 albums with me, and he toured America with me in the beginning on our first American tour. A great levelling factor, a great sense of humour, real honest guy, and I think probably my best friend in the whole of the business. He's like my younger, richer, balder brother, you know. I love him very much. His influence and his sort of stabilising on the tour was very good, important at the beginning of a solo career.
You've always required a heavy drum sound, haven't you?
Well, I think if you listen to radio, it depends. If you're after a synthesized rhythm box sound, that's fine, like Big Log. But if you want to come across on, especially on AM radio, which is what you've got in a lot of Europe, you really do have to accentuate the beat. And I don't think that I record an ambient drum sound for the sake of it, to make it heavy. It's just to make it pronounced and to bring people's attention to it. Yeah.
With the event of you going solo and thinking of ideas as to how you're going to make up your albums, where you're going to get your songs from, stuff like that, you'd already surround yourself with established musicians, more on the rock factor. But 2 names that I remember reading about that you were very excited about was the young Eurythmics, who were in their sort of embryo stage in 82, and also the Stray Cats, who you enjoyed very much.
Yeah.
Any other bands apart from those two names, or do you want to say more about those two names?
Well, I've had...
Were they important to you?
I think at the beginning when Annie and Dave disbanded the Tourists and tried to shoot their manager and formed the Eurythmics, I thought that what Annie's voice was tremendous, always will be. And the beginnings of what they were doing was great because it held the commercial hooks of the 60s, of the early 60s pop songs, the Bobby V type songs. And it took them the Carole King melodies and it imprinted them with something very upfront at the time and very kind of distinct. And so it wasn't new, but it was a new lick of paint on the same old thing. And I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, really.
What about the Stray Cats? Was it their expression, their excitement?
Yeah, well, I mean, I always wanted to be Gene Vincent, didn't I? So, so seeing Brian Setzer, really, and everything that they spawned, even in the psychobilly stuff now with the Prisoners and the Milkshakes and the Guana Bats, all that sort of wild punk rockabilly stuff, was great. I've worked with Brian quite a lot since then. I did a big Saturday Night Live show in America with Brian and the Blues Brothers Band.
Was it that combination that buzzed you up to go and do it again, to go solo?
It's the thing, the whole thing is that I can more or less do anything with anybody, and my reputation now is good enough for very few people to poo-poo, you know. I'm not going back and doing old songs for the sake of it and for the dollar. I'm angst-ridden, but doing what I like to do. So it gives me a lot of opportunity to work with new people or old people, or I get a lot of pleasant phone calls from all sorts of areas of music now. All I've got to do now is convince European DJs that what I got to offer is worth playing lots and lots, you know, instead of harking on the past all the time.
Let's push on and try and do that job for you with In the Mood, which is what year?
83.
83. So we're still in early years, aren't we?
Yeah.
Robert Plant and In the Mood. Robert, that had one or two interesting situations. People watching Robert Plant wouldn't expect necessarily to see a dance troupe within your video. You actually put one in, and there were some rather nice technical effects there as well.
Yeah.
So how involved are you in the making of the video, and why the necessity to put the dance? I mean, the song lent it.
Yeah,
to it.
well, I'm totally involved. I mean, I have to be totally involved in everything. I spread myself a little too thin sometimes. The highlight of that video was me singing to a lemon, you know, if you really, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there has to be an air of humour in the thing, and there also has to be... I can't act, or there's no point in trying to act out a 3.5 minutes, 4-minute track and putting this kind of emotive delivery into it. So the nuances are the important things about it. You know, I mean, the Duran Duran, I keep talking about them, but they're the guys who correlate and coordinate their videos. That the amount of work is spectacular, and it's very good, and it's very arty and very sort of, hey. The way I go about it is totally different. I like to put in a sort of obscure sense of humour into the thing, and to get those black guys dancing like that and to wind them up enough to be that loose that it isn't that professional was really good. You could, the fact that they were looking at each other and
not easy to dance to a track which is basically guitar orientated anyway.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think that is I think, with all due respect, you're wrong, because the beat was there. Phil Collins was like a, you know, you had that hi-hat helping along all the time. And when you're actually shooting the video and you're shooting to sync and you're going to sync it up afterwards, you just have it exactly what they would use on the street corner, a ghetto blaster up full blast. And it picks, yeah, and it picks up that drum beat, you know, and you can't fail to do whatever it is, you know.
You're impressed by the sort of the back line of Duran Duran, aren't you? Or at least the now formed power station as such. So impressed. I mean, the Honey Drippers, when that was instigated, there were one or two elements of the Honey Drippers which are very much sort of Duran orientated as well, or power station orientated.
Yeah.
Nile Rodgers' involvement, for instance.
That's right, yeah. Well, when the Honey Drippers concept was first dreamt up by Ahmet Ertegun, who is like the master of rock and roll, the guy who started Atlantic Records, he suggested I went to New York and just did something in an afternoon instead of watching the Wolves play. So it was a Saturday afternoon. My time could have perhaps been better spent, who knows. And he said, come around, I've got a rhythm section, man, and I got Jeff Beck and I got Nile Rodgers, who were working with Tina Turner around the corner. So they came around and we did 6 tracks in 2.5 hours, something like that. And it was phenomenal, because...
Just for fun?
Just for fun, and for the fact that we all even the new musicians like to play a bit of Chuck Berry, or they like to do a bit of that straight old rock or straight old R&B, you know, or straight old whatever it is that is old to these people, you know. It's like going back and having your hobby, you know, reading your dandy or whatever it is, or going back to something where you don't have to sharpen up all the angles to get it right. It's just, if you get the feel right, then you've got the whole thing.
Do you think it's right that a glorified jam session should go to #1 in America?
Absolutely, because it puts the whole idea of entertainment and music firmly back in its place again. I mean, I spend so much time in a clinical atmosphere creating what I think are mini epics for myself and for my idea of perfection. But there's nothing better than going around the corner and bumping into 6 or 7 guys who are tops at what they do, and just doing something that cuts through the REO Speedwagons and the Journeys and all that sort of Richard Clayderman and all that, and goes, bang, have a little bit of that. It's great.
So you got a buzz out of that?
Oh, yeah, fabulous. Well, I came back from that straight into the new album, and I've never been so effervescent in my life.
You see, as your solo career is continuing, as we're seeing it, and as in the visual side of the video, you are actually yourself looking better in the videos as things go. You seem more relaxed. You seem more confident. Is this something which you feel, or is it something?
Yeah, it had to come, really. I mean, I was very twitchy at the beginning. I've been a very twitchy person for years. I'm quite intense, sheerly because I have this ambition, you know. And as I start to get somewhere along the line to where I want to go, I start settling down and doing programs like this and feeling okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's see more music. Honey Drippers this time. Good Rocking at Midnight. Barroom Blues, isn't it really? Good time barroom blues. And
Well, those were the days, and they still are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me, the whole idea of the Honey Drippers and barroom blues was enormously exciting. Can you just drop something like that and then go back to something else? I mean,
Well, yeah, that fired me to go back to something else, because I'd done that. I'd come back from New York and done something like that in the shortest imaginable space of time. In fact, embarrassingly short space of time. And then did Sea of Love in London, which was done in tongue-in-cheek very quickly. Because if you do it any longer than like an hour or 2 hours, you've missed the whole reason for doing it in the first place. So I went back to the band and I said, right, this is it. We've got it now. We've broken. I've left all my old identity behind. I've had a big hit, and they were all very angry because they didn't play on the record.
I thought they might be somehow.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I kept all the money, and then we went straight into this new album. So they went in with a dual purpose: A, because they were angry that they weren't involved, because it was done like that quickly, that they couldn't be. And B, because they wanted to prove that they were capable of doing absolutely anything. So I said to Robbie, don't play the guitar like you've ever played it before. Now it's time to change your whole style. I said to Richie, forget about Little Feat. Don't drum like Little Feat. Let's go for rhythms and angles and make it a lot more of an angular album.
You were inspired, then you had to go and inspire them.
Well, yeah, I went in with a large whip, and every time I turned my back, they were all going. But we caught it by doing it, by approaching it like that. We actually caught something which we'll never catch again in the same intensity and for the same reasons.
So what year are we up to now? 84?
Well, this is
84, going into 85?
This, yeah.
Right.
And so that was it. It was like, oh, yeah, we've got it. And I figure that it's probably the best album I've been involved with.
But you were cracking the whips around about Christmas time, were you?
All the time. Every second of the day. I'm going to rehearsals from here, and I expect a roll call when I get there.
When you come back to Britain, I know you were born in the Midlands, you now live elsewhere in Britain. You were very involved in sport generally. You've always liked sport. You're a very athletic person. You particularly like football. Football is the sort of the sport of Europe, which is where everyone is watching us. You must have been affected badly, loving the sport as much as you did, about recent happenings in football.
Yeah, very. I mean, it's
So
trite.
you thought of once actually buying your own football club, didn't you?
Well,
The Wolves.
everybody has a dream to either hold the cup or buy the cup or whatever it is, the cup, but for that success on a different level. And I think people in our position, we have this mutual thing that at the end of all the absorption of pressure, it's nice to have outlets. I play tennis and I still play soccer, and I like to be a voyeur of many things, and one of them is soccer, you know. So I do have a passion for it, and I am sad that other people's frustrations have to be let out to such a degree that that really, I mean, maybe we're due for a war or something like that.
Do you worry about the temperament of young people, man?
Yeah, I take my son to see soccer matches now, and I'm very concerned at the fact that there's this almost neurotic atmosphere at the soccer ground now, and I go watch third division stuff now, and it's just the atmosphere of that potential, that kinetic energy or whatever it is, the possible outburst of violence. It's I think if you expect it and there's an air there of expectation, then it's going to happen anyway. You know?
Do you think that young people musically are as creative now as they were? I mean, have you seen anything recently that you think is very exciting?
Recently, I've just come back from touring North America for 3 months, and underneath the sort of stock-in-trade AOR radio, there are a lot of very good bands. There's a band called the Beat Farmers who are very good, who I believe just toured Britain and Europe. And there's a band called the Del Fuegos who are also very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you sign them up?
Well, if
would you become a Richard Branson? Would you become
no.
a record company executive?
I can't grow a beard. But I don't think there's any point in even considering that, because it's such it's another generation away from the vitality of creating music,
right,
that I have to stay creating it until at least I'm as old as David Bowie. Something like that. Old tart I am.
Robert Plant, Pink and Black.
Don't make them like that, do they, anymore?
As you said, the perfect song. Someone said to me, a very respected producer, Sade's producer, Robin Miller, said to me that it doesn't matter whether you've hit or not. The most important thing is to make a great song. And it's actually great to one person, that's the person who actually writes it and actually makes it. So, I mean, as long as they're all great songs, does it really matter whether they're hits?
Yeah. Yeah, in a word. I think so, because I really think it's as good as anything else that's around, and I personally believe a lot better. Well, I could be pinned down for it, and I think that's a pretty good song, you know, but that wasn't a hit. The next one you play will be.
That's the latest single. Before we get there, just a couple of things to fill in. Firstly, Live Aid. Your re-emergence at Live Aid with 1 2 old friends.
Somebody said opening a can of worms.
Did it work?
Opening a can of worms. Well, the lid's back on it again now.
Just a one-off?
Yeah, it was atrocious, but it was all right.
Really?
It was the right reason to do it for the right thing.
Exactly, and that's the most important thing. Now, you're putting a show together for Britain is quite exciting, because we can see you at 2 of the biggest stadiums in Britain, one in Birmingham, one in London. Are you looking forward to going on the stage again?
Oh yeah, because it's only been a month since I've been working. We have a really good show. We have Jay Giles' horn players, Bette Midler's girl singers. It's
but this is the big venue, because you did go make a break from tradition and go and do 1 2 smaller venues, didn't you? To sort of break yourself back into it again.
It's all dependent on the kind of show that you present, and we have a stage which is very well thought out, and it's back to a little bit of pomp and circumstance, but it works very well with the angles of the music.
Do you think you'll take the show to Europe, perhaps?
Well, if this actual program that we're doing now has any effect on my career, absolutely, yeah, I'd be more than pleased to. Yeah.
And where else? I mean, you've done Japan, you've done Britain, you've done America, you've done Australia as a solo performer. Do you hanker to get back there again?
Oh yeah, well I've just come back from North America. I can only look forward to going everywhere again, because I'm building this career, you see.
Young at heart. Robert, you've had some great highs in your life. You've also had some great lows as well, haven't you? What is the ultimate aim now, do you think?
Well, on a musical terms, which is why we're doing this program,
right?
It's to reinstate my voice on the airwaves, which is somewhere where it hasn't ever really had a fair sort of hearing, and to take with me the musicians who I think are spectacular, and to combine with other people, and to keep on putting that Plant stamp until I get it through to everybody that it's okay, it doesn't hurt you, it's not offensive, and you don't have to lock up your daughters anymore. Maybe lock up your moms.
You seem to be fairly happy.
Yeah,
actually, happy at the moment. So, will you stay in Britain, or will you? Britain is your home, and remain your home as well. Yeah. Will you buy a football club?
I should probably play for the Wolves if things carry on the way they are. I don't know about buying one. No, I don't. I don't have that much money left. A season ticket, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, you're one of the greatest characters in rock and roll. Thank you for the most enjoyable 3/4 of an hour or so.
Thank you too. It's been great.
And looking at your backlog of videos, we now come right up to date, which is the brand new single, called Little by Little. I wish you a lot of success in Britain and also in Europe as well, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Here's Little by Little from Robert Plant.